What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Morello Show, episode number 31. We're officially into the 30s here. Of course, my name is Kyle Morello. I'm your host, and you all have made it to the process episode of the Morello Show. So let me introduce my guests. First, we have returning for the third time now, just on a few weeks ago, but we love to have him back. Dan Buzz Wilson. How we doing, Buzz?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on, Kyle. Glad to be here. Glad to debate some Sixers. Seems like a tradition every spring. Or in the case of last year, summer, we do this as the Sixers get bounced in the second round. But happy to, join in on the discourse. Always a blast,
Yes. It's listen, obviously I'm an outside perspective, but it's very, very interesting.
Who's the Knicks lose to in the playoffs this year, by the way?
Well, the ping pong ball is probably tomorrow, or when this comes out on Tuesday or honestly, Wednesday.
It's better than just the purgatory of continually losing. So yes. Maybe I should shut up. Yeah.
When this comes out, the ping pong balls may have already defeated us. We'll see. Okay. And with me for the first time, we have Aaron Strongin. Aaron, how you doing?
I'm good tonight. How are you?
I am doing well. I have you two on a podcast together, and I never thought I'd see the day. So this is great. For those of you who don't know, Buzz and Aaron are best friends. They've been friends for the longest time.
We've been on podcasts before together. Our appearances on Locked on Phillies. We once appeared on any pod together. I mean, it's happened. This isn't like the first time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. First time on the Morello Show.
First time on the Morello Show. That's
all that matters.
You start to question the host at that point.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. All right. So we're gonna get into this. Obviously, we have the WIP producer, we have the local Sixers fans. So you guys definitely have some opinions on the Philadelphia 76ers getting bounced by the Miami Heat in 6 games. Obviously, the first two without Joel. Heat starts playing the next 2 games at home. You guys tie up the series, get blown out on the road in game 5, and then lose a tough one in game 6. So, Buzz, we'll start with you in terms of at least this series and this post, or we'll just go this series. What was it about this matchup that the Sixers went wrong with? Was it the Heat were just better? Were they better coached? Was it a personnel issue? Was it an effort issue? What are we looking at here?
Well, I'll get to the effort in a second because that was a huge issue in this series. I do believe they were better coached, although I think Doc Rivers was outmatched as a coach, both against Nick Nurse and Eric Spoelstra, 2 of the better coaches in the East. But I don't think that was like the ultimate reason they lost. The effort in the Heat series was kind of what was most concerning for me in general. They came back in the series. I thought they showed some fight in the home games 3 and 4 after going down, 2-0 down in Miami. You obviously don't have your best player in Embiid, but you come back in games 5 and 6, lay a total egg in Miami. You come back for game 6, and you're like, all right, maybe they could force a game 7. Now, some people believe they could still win the series. I didn't specifically. I thought they were going to lose in 7 at that point because at least they'd put together one more good home performance and then lose on Sunday. And instead, they just kind of rolled over. You didn't see a lot of fight in this team. The Heat were the team going after every loose ball. The Heat were the team doing kind of like all the little things and making plays down the stretch. I'm not going to say it was only the effort. You obviously need a hell of a lot more out of James Harden. He just looks cooked at this moment. And that's really the most frustrating part for me is that when you look at the Miami Heat, I don't believe they're one of the best teams in the NBA. They're obviously in the conference finals. They're one of the last 4 standing, credit to them. But I think they're just a well-coached, well-disciplined team. We hear a lot about Heat culture, and they try hard. They just give 100% effort every single night, which I'm not going to sit here and take for granted because not every team in the NBA does it. The Sixers clearly did not do it. And they got themselves to a 1 seed. They got themselves home court up to this point. They have themselves home court advantage in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics. And you're seeing what maxing out that potential is. It's not a team full of superstars. You have Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry, who's cooked also, didn't play most of the series and scored 6 total points in the games that he did play. That's not a star-studded team. Yes, I know you have Tyler Hero. Yes, I know you have Bam. You have guys who can play. But it's really, 8 undrafted guys on that roster? Come on. That's a well-coached, well-disciplined team who gives max effort around Jimmy Butler, who, again, they made the NBA Finals once in the bubble, but that was not an unbeatable team for the Sixers. And that's really what's most frustrating about this from the Sixers perspective of okay, this is a recurring pattern. They get to the second round, they get a legitimate challenge, and they're continually the ones either backing down or not rising to the occasion. And, I don't think I'm going out on a limb here speaking for all Sixers fans of we're just sick of it.
That's fair. That's fair. Aaron, do you agree with what he said? Do you think it's a different issue? What's your take on it?
It's kind of unfortunate that I have to agree with him on this one, but for the most part, he's speaking facts. Like, what really hurts is the first two games. If our coach is going to play DeAndre Jordan over 15 minutes, you pretty much shouldn't even have play those games and just save the players' bodies because you've automatically lost those games. And I just thought that the effort the Heat was giving was just the difference. I don't think the Heat have better players. I still don't think the Heat have better players. I just think the Heat had a really good defensive game plan, and I think the Heat gave a lot more effort than the Sixers did. That's for sure. There was like, especially game six, like maybe 3 or 4 players that played on the Sixers were giving legitimate effort. And it always just sucks that, and when it comes to the playoffs, Embiid always seems to be hurt. I don't know. Like, it's not an excuse for him, but he's always hurt. Like the last 2 years, at least, he's been hurt, and it's really been a detriment to just everything the team's trying to do.
I just wanted to add really quick to that 2 points that he said. Number one, in games 1 and 2, like I think Doc Rivers made it pretty clear that like when Embiid came back, Paul Reed still was the backup center. He just didn't feel comfortable playing him in a starter's role, like basically because of the fouling stuff, which I don't even like. I don't blame him so much for this series as like the last 6 weeks of the season, like what, like you were still insistent on DeAndre Jordan filling in that role when you know your star player who's your center like has injury history. Like that series, those 2 games were lost like back in March and in April, not even so much in May. So that's like what kind of annoyed me more so than anything else. You never gave the guy a shot. You never tried to give him playing time. Like you're trying to use the regular season as a tune-up to the playoffs, which is what it is a lot of times in the NBA, especially when you're just playing for seeding late. So that was kind of frustrating from my end. And the other thing, just in regards to like the lasting image I'm going to have in my head, and it's not like the reason why they lost the series. It was obviously not as close of a game. Like the lasting image that everyone had in their mind from last year was Ben Simmons not dunking the ball in game 7, right? But this time it was not nearly as close of a game, but the image of Jimmy Butler literally running around James Harden to get his own rebound, like is just kind of encapsulates like what that entire series looked like. Like,
yeah, and then he sunk a 3 in his face.
Yeah, exactly right. So like it's not where the game was lost, but like that is, if you had to sum up what the Sixers looked like, especially in game 5 and game 6, like that's it. A Cook superstar who's not giving max effort, and the Heat are just outworking them on both ends of the floor. And you can't, when you have a team like the Heat who are literally known for giving that type of effort, like you can't expect to win the series. It's not going to happen. On the Embiid thing, and we'll get more into this and like, you know, where his legacy is headed, whatever. It is just a frustrating reality that the guy, you know, never seems to be 100% intact by the playoffs. Again, like not an excuse. Like you see, he's clearly relying. He's not as good at. He's relying on jumpers more, relying on physical contact less than he ordinarily would. And he's also not as effective in the role that you're playing him. And it kind of leaves you in like this weird predicament of like, you need him to be at his best to win at this stage of the season. And you're consistently not getting it. So, you know, if we were any other fan, you know, if we were fans of any other team in the NBA, we'd be looking in at Embiid and being like, okay, that guy's been the face of the team for how long? And they consistently are a team that comes up short. And the only way you shake that kind of legacy in the NBA is by getting over that hump. It also just, you know, sparks like a larger conversation of, you know, we spent all season and into the season or like into the playoffs debating like who should be the MVP between 2 big men in Jokic and Embiid. And both of them are not playing right now. Like obviously you need help. Obviously it's kind of a weird thing where those 2 guys were regarded as the 2 best regular season players. And then also Giannis, who was in the mix, also gets bounced in game 7. Obviously his legacy a lot different because they won the finals last year, but it kind of just sparks like a larger conversation of like, what are these 2 guys going to be career wise? I get Embiid, you know, does not have the durability thing in his favor, but if we're starting to question like whether this team will ever get over that hump and win a championship, it absolutely has to be factored in the conversation.
Well, answer me this then, and Aaron, we can start with you. If you're Daryl Morey, what do you do to change things to put around Embiid? Because obviously, you know, they've had pieces in place. You have Tyrese Maxey, who's a great second-year player. You had traded for James Harden, who, yes, he did look cooked in the playoffs, but he also had flashes of brilliance. I mean, the 2 games in Philly this series that they just lost, he played well. He's been a distributor the entire time, just hasn't been scoring like we're used to. Again, he's getting older, so he's probably a little washed. You know, you got guys like Danny Green who contributed. You got guys like Shake Milton who contributed. But You also have guys like Matisse Thybulle and DeAndre Jordan, and who aren't contributing on the offensive end, and they're trying to Doc Rivers trying to hide them, but you can't hide players in the playoffs. It's not going to work. So, what do the Sixers need? Maybe not specific players, but in terms of scheme and personnel to match up to go along with Joel Embiid. What do you say?
Well, first I want to mention that you said that Tyrese Maxey is on the Sixers. I wasn't aware that he is currently rostered. I thought he was a net.
For those of you who don't know, right around the trade deadline this year,
Correct.
our friend Buzz here tweeted out trade.
It was
okay. Say the trade.
Pull the trigger, Daryl. Pull the trigger, even if it includes Maxey. Daryl was the exact line.
So Buzz wanted Maxey in Brooklyn is the bottom line, and Aaron probably tweets it twice a day at least. Still, and that was in February. So
yeah, it was actually on my birthday. He tweeted it.
So February 4th. So yeah, it was a long time ago.
Well, this
birthday present
gift he's ever had, and the Eagles won the Super Bowl on the same day.
Yes. Yes, and he is an Eagles fan. So that's how much that tweet was hilarious. I mean, listen, it was funny. Like you don't go anywhere without Tyrese Maxey in this series, or even the Toronto series.
Yeah, you probably don't even win that one without him.
Honestly. But moving forward, what do you think the Sixers need to put around Embiid and Maxey, I guess?
Well, I've had some time to think about it, so I'm not as emotional right now as I was right after they lost and James Harden looked like he'd never played basketball before in the second half. But I think at this point, if he's willing to take what he's rumored to take less money and work around the cap, I think that's something you have to do that just to give it another try, maybe give him the offseason to like rehab this hamstring or whatever this is. But I think basically everyone else has to go. I was Toby pilled for a minute there, but I just don't think he's him anymore. I think he has to go. I think just everyone up. You got to overhaul the bench. You got to overhaul the role players. The role players aren't good enough. I'm fine with Shake. Doc seems to play him inconsistently, which I don't understand why. He's probably the best bench player they had. And
no, shout out to Shake. Like actually showed up for Game 6 when like no one else did.
He does show up. He did. He hustled. He made some threes.
Like
I'm still not sure how that wasn't a foul on Jimmy Butler fouling on the three. I don't understand that, but he did show up. Niang, he just can't guard anyone. He's in the words of Patrick Beverly, he's a cone. DeAndre Jordan, that goes without saying, he has to go. Furkan shot worse from three than probably you can. Like he's got to obviously go. Just I don't know. Danny Green has a torn ACL, so they're gonna have to replace that. But who has to go the absolute most is Matisse. He absolutely has to go.
This guy's got a mural. Like for what? Like
yes.
What is the least deserving mural in the history of sports?
Lockdown defense, apparently.
I'm really not sure what the hype is. If he was a backup 5 who was like 7 feet tall, he would be like a great player. But he's like 6'5", and if he's gonna be that irrelevant on offense, he's gotta go. You're gonna have to figure out a way to get shooters, and it's gonna have to be cheap. And I'm not sure exactly how you do that. But again, Mr. Glenn Rivers didn't play Isaiah Joe, so we have no idea how good he is and how much we can trust him because he was never played. And they were playing Furkan 20 minutes a night consistently when we all knew he was cooked. And so it's partly on just Doc Rivers refusing to play the young players, but that we'd have no idea how good they are. And I don't know how Daryl, I heard before we got him, he could work the margins, has done a terrible job on the margins. Like, just look at the teams that are still in, like the Celtics have Grant Williams, like developed, the Heat have Strus and all those guys that they've developed.
Heat's roster is Jimmy Butler and the margins. Like,
yes,
I know.
Jimmy Bam and the margins. Pretty much what it is.
The Warriors, literally their entire team was gotten on the margins. Gary Payton who's hurt. Like all those guys are on the margins. Mavericks, big contribution from Dorian Finney-Smith. He was an undrafted player. The Sixers have no one like that because
Dinwiddie.
yeah, just I thought that was an awful trade at the time, and who's laughing now? They're in the Western Conference Finals probably because of that trade. But I don't know. This Daryl Morey is going to have to do something, and I'm not sure exactly who's a free agent that's a shooter or a wing, but you need more wing depth, and you need someone who isn't scared. Like when PJ, they were literally scared of PJ Tucker. I don't understand. Like, you know what I mean? Like he just like players like that who just can enforce their will on the game without like being a superstar and not being scared of the moment. Yeah, so that's done. I'm done with this rant now. Let Buzz go.
Really quick, because you mentioned being Toby pilled, and we just are name checking Tobias Harris and Jimmy Butler here. Just really quick, I wanted to get both your guys' take. Like the more I thought about it, not even the more I thought about it, just like the day after. Obviously, we all saw the video of Jimmy Butler like walking off after Game 6, yelling Tobias Harris over me. Like
I was gonna get into all that in a second. We can do that now.
But I thought it was kind of funny because like they effectively chose like Ben Simmons over. Like I know they gave the money to Tobias, but like it wasn't like Tobias and Butler had beef. Like they effectively chose Ben Simmons over.
Yes, but they had to at the time allocate the money somewhere.
No, but
so,
like Tobias was their second choice. It wasn't like they were like, oh, let's pick Tobias because we don't want Butler.
Right. And also, you had the factor in the Horford contract too. That's also arguably who they picked over Jimmy Butler too. Even though it really was Ben because of the personality.
I thought it was like a funny like Kobe MJ-esque moment where like clearly Butler had Tobias Harris on a dartboard somewhere and like just got pissed at him through no fault of Tobias Harris.
Yeah, I mean, and there's by all accounts Tobias Harris isn't a bad guy. He's not a bad teammate. Good player. I mean, he's not a great player, but he's
an overpaid.
He's an overplay. He gets paid like an all-star, and he's not quite an all-star, which I think is fair. I think he's a good player.
He's campaigning to be an all-star a year ago.
Yeah. His skill set also doesn't really benefit this team at all, especially with Harden and with the emergence of Maxey.
No, because he's a ball stopper.
Yeah, he's got he got better at like the spot up threes, but he still isn't preferable in that role. It's not. He was rebounding at some points, then he stopped. Was defending at some points, then he stopped. Maybe it's just because Siakam has no bag, but that's why it looked like he was playing good defense. But who knows? I was like overdosing on Toby pills during the Raptors series, and then like I just completely, I'm sober now.
You're sober now. But that's like we'll get to the point I want to make in a second, but. For this team in general, I mean, obviously it's been obvious for a few years now, but you just need shooters. You just need guys who can spot up. Like Seth Curry was perfect for this team. And, you had to trade him to get hard. I mean, it is what it is. That's someone you send to Brooklyn Buzz.
I wish it was Matisse.
But, of course.
It's annoying, though. Let me just say, because we've been saying like the last 4 or 5 seasons, all we need is to get shooters, and they still haven't done it.
No.
The Sixers need shooters the same way the Phillies need bullpen help and like the Eagles needed corners for years. Like it's just the same position. Like,
you mean Namdi wasn't getting it done for you?
Yeah, or like the Flyers have needed a goaltender. Like it's the same position every year.
Well, now the Flyers need everything else, but
yeah, well, they were horrible. But my point is, it's like the same position. Like it feels like our entire life just like fails to get addressed.
Yes, and it's the problem though. I mean, I know you want Matisse gone. That's probably fair, but his defense would be missed if you got him gone. He's a very good defender, but at the same time, you need shooters too. And 3-and-D guys is probably what you're going to have to go for. Though they're not, there's not a plethora of 3-and-D guys, but there's enough where you can probably.
He's literally just a D guy.
Yes, he's just a D guy. That's literally all he is. There's no threes. It's just
he's a 0-and-D guy.
Yes, exactly.
And by
there's
the
no
way,
room for that.
You barely had him in the Raptors series anyway because he couldn't make the trips up to Toronto, and actually like. Smart move by Doc, like phasing him out of his playing time, even in the games in Philly, because you knew you wouldn't have him in the regular season leading up to him, and in that series, like you'll be fine without Matisse Thybulle. I'm not going to miss him.
Yeah, I'm not going to miss him either. It's unfortunate that this Danny Green injury happened because I'm still pilled on him and I would want him back. But
he's a good player. He's always been a really good player.
On a team full of losers, he's a win.
I feel like he got kind of a bad rap because he couldn't guard Trae Young, but like
who does guard Trae Young?
Guard Trae Young?
Who does guard Trae Young?
Well, you still have Ben.
The Knicks did not last year in the playoffs.
The Sixers.
Yeah, well, the city
Yeah.
of New York, the city of New York still walks around, slandering Trae Young's name after
Yes,
losing.
and I'm part of that.
Yeah, if you have Ben Simmons on the roster for a reason, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Until you didn't, but I mean that was last year. Yeah.
At the time,
But at that point, yeah, I mean you absolutely use him to guard Trae Young.
it was annoying.
Yeah, that's a discussion for another day. But I wanted to get into the probably thing I was most excited about to talk about with you guys on here. And like Buzz kind of aforementioned earlier, it's part of the grieving process for Sixers fans for the last 5 or so years. And it's the yearly discussions of the process.
Correct.
And I'm going to ask you guys a very simple question on the surface, but a very deep question. And you guys will know exactly what I'm talking about. And Buzz, we will start with you.
Right.
Did the process work?
No, because it hasn't resulted in the title. Now that doesn't mean it's a bad idea. I kind of related it to the other day, and I've thought this before. Like when they make a documentary or like a movie about the process, it's kind of gonna get portrayed a little bit like Moneyball was with the A's, right? Like obviously different sport and different results and whatever, but ultimately at the end of the day, like they had an idea that was considered radical at the time. Like it was trying to solve a little bit of a different problem, but it was unconventional. And then, it kind of revitalized how business was done in Major League Baseball, right? And like the Red Sox, obviously with a much bigger budget, like win a few years later and analytics becomes much more prevalent. And it's like the first guy through the wall always gets bloody. I think they literally say that in the movie. When I view the process, like, okay, obviously the Suns just lost yesterday, but like they went to the NBA finals. The Suns like did almost as much losing as the Sixers did. And you could say maybe the Sixers were most deliberate about it and had a name for it and whatever else. But ultimately, it was a good idea that up to this point has just been executed horrendously. And, you look at all the draft misses they've had or trades that haven't worked out, or frankly, the star and all of this. You had one star in Embiid who just can't stay healthy towards the end of seasons, and Simmons who, had to ultimately leave town because that guy kept coming up small and ended up falling out with the organization. Like almost everything that has gone wrong has. Now, for it to actually work, like I would argue it has to end with a title. If you're going to deliberately lose that much, like it has to result in it. But not every good, like things can be a good idea that don't work is kind of my takeaway on it. And so I think ultimately it'll make a good movie one day. And right now there's not a direct path for how this team does get over the hump, but that doesn't mean it hasn't changed how business is done around the league. You see teams like the Thunder, like deliberately tanking now. You saw teams like the Suns compile assets from years of losing and like make it to the finals. And you've seen rules literally with the lottery and elsewhere change. And now things like load management and tanking and whatever else throughout the league has like, there's a little bit of pushback from the league because they realize it's a real thing. So other teams wouldn't be emulating it if there wasn't like a good idea there. It just, they haven't executed it well.
Aaron, what do you think?
Well, I think the main issue is when the NBA pushed out old.
They pushed out Hanky, yeah.
They pushed Hinkie out, and they gave us probably like the worst front office in the history of professional basketball making decisions. There's like obviously like just god awful decisions in hindsight that were made there. And if we ended up with one of those decisions going, or like one of those like options of things go our way, we'd be having a different conversation right now. Like imagine if we had like Tatum or something like that, which was obviously very much on the table. Picking like Jahlil Okafor, like Fultz doesn't have whatever happened to him.
Trading away Mikal Bridges, like the list goes on.
Oh yeah, that's not as big of a deal.
It's not as big as the ones you just mentioned, but like that was the first thing that happened after like Colangelo even left.
Yeah, like choosing Jimmy Butler. Like there's a lot of things like 50-50 decisions that if one went a different way, we'd be having a different conversation right now. But at the end of the day, like it was the right decision at the time. And it's definitely the right decision now that you went for it, and it just have a good idea, I guess, like Buzz said, wasn't executed. But I think like it's funny because we were in purgatory there with like the Drew Holiday, Evan Turner core, and it seems like we're back in purgatory, just like at a higher level now, like higher in the playoffs, like more expectation purgatory. But I don't know. I still feel like there's some hope, especially if you can pull something off this offseason. Like there's these rumors about Daryl trying to make some moves, and I have no idea what that move could potentially be. But obviously, if he pulls it off, there's going to be a ton of hype, and it might change the answer to this question in a year. Who knows?
That's true. And that was one thing I was going to say too, is it's not done yet. Like Embiid's 27, 28,
He's 28.
28. So like he's still in his prime. It's not done yet. This discussion could change in a year, like you said, Aaron.
Yeah, I can't really give you a yes or no yet.
And that's fair. I think I know people will say that it did work because it made them contenders again, which was the goal ultimately. Like, obviously you go through losing so you can start winning again. But at the end of the day, year in, year out, you are trying to win a championship. So, Buzz, I do agree with that. I think to this point, granted, of course, it could still change, but it's failed for now. I mean, and all the bad decisions that you just mentioned, Aaron. Actually, I was gonna go ask you guys.
Yeah, there's definitely some I've forgotten. Like trading Tyrese Maxey to Brooklyn was a bad decision that I forgot to mention, but
Hilarious. No, but I was gonna ask you like each of your, we'll say top 3 process moments that kind of derailed the whole thing. And I can go first. You guys can have time to think because I was thinking while you guys were talking. But
okay.
Number 1, not re-signing Jimmy Butler, obviously. If you guys re-sign Jimmy Butler, I think you might have a championship at this point because he's that good and he's proven that. And he proved that in the series against you guys just this past week or so. So I think that's number 1. I think number 2, I guess in the same breath, the Horford and Harris contracts, just because of how much that set you guys back. You had to trade some assets away to move Horford. You still have Tobias when that money could be allotted elsewhere.
Yeah. Can I just say Al Horford looks like he's like an all-star now, and it's really, really pissing me off.
That guy, you just put him in a Celtics uniform, and
he's just the best. Celtics or Hawks uniform.
30 against Giannis.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Listen,
like shooting like 100% from 3.
He's always been a great player. Like I'm not necessarily mad at the decision.
He's been a great player outside 1 year.
No, he was good with the Hawks. He was good with
outside the 1 year with the Sixers, he's been pretty great.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's the problem. Like I don't blame. Was Morey the GM at the time, or was it Colangelo still?
It was Elton Brand, I think.
It was Elton Brand, right. Okay. So I don't blame Elton Brand for signing him because that was one of the reasons. He was out of options. He was out of options, and that was one of
the bottom line is they had to get him out of Boston, right?
Exactly. That was the one person who could stop Embiid in the Eastern Conference, and they had to get him on the team. Plus, Horford was a natural 4 when he was in college of Florida, and he was really well there. Though he played the 5 a lot with Atlanta and with Boston. But you slide him next to Embiid, you have another capable defender in there.
They were following the Temple basketball 2 centers, man.
Yeah, of course. Those guys, they love those 2 centers. And I mean, I guess the other thing would have to be the drafting. I mean, obviously, and I don't blame them for the trade up for Fultz either, because at the time, that's what the Sixers needed. They needed someone like Washington.
At the time, it looked smart.
It looked great. And, maybe they should have taken Tatum number 1 overall anyway, because that's who the Celtics wanted no matter what. They kind of pulled a draft day move, Kevin Costner. And obviously now looking back on it, they could use the shooting and the length that Tatum provides. But I think that the Okafor pick, I mean, that he had a good rookie year, but he couldn't defend. He was like cement on the blocks. So
in their defense that year, I'm not even sure who.
I was gonna say it wasn't a great draft that year, so I don't know who they would have picked. And then the traded for Zaire Smith for Mikal Bridges, I think was another thing, because if you had Mikal Bridges now, conversation changes a lot. They don't draft Thibault, probably. They probably get someone else instead, who can maybe shoot a basketball into a net. Because they have one of the best defenders in the league with Bridges, who can also score. So, I mean, there's just a lot of factors, like you both have said, that have derailed the process. But
they were star hunting, and then that star turned out to be Tobias Harris. But
yes. So Buzz,
for about a week. Don't forget.
It's true.
Well, I missed that. What did you say?
Oh, he was him for about a week.
Oh yeah, sure.
For about a week. So Buzz, maybe you can go however much.
These are at the time, just like in hindsight. I mean, in no particular order. Yes, drafting Fultz over Tatum, like you point to that. You point to like letting Butler go, and basically choosing him over Ben Simmons. But then like, I mean, is it easy to say just like Ben Simmons' career? Like, is that one?
Well, I mean, I didn't want to mention that because I think that was a little too convoluted. But yes, I mean,
Okay, so
it is.
those three.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
So
that works.
Ben Simmons' career, letting Butler go, and taking Fultz, the Fultz Tatum draft.
Fair. Aaron?
Yeah, what honestly is like the worst thing of this whole process is having to deal every year with those Ben Simmons shooting videos. And if he could actually shoot like that, he'd probably be one of the best players in the NBA, but he can't. So that's honestly number one for me, is just like Ben Simmons missed potential, like being compared to LeBron James, like, and not even coming close to that. So that's the miss number one. Like we won the lottery, got him, and then he just let us down. Uh, Obviously, like Tatum, can't really argue with that. It's insane hindsight bias, but at the time, I remember saying I did want Tatum. Buzz knows I said it, and
He was high on
you
Tatum.
can't deny it either.
He was also
And
high on Harry Giles for what it's worth.
I wanted him
Hilarious.
later. I wanted him late, and he'd, by the way, be a better backup center than DeAndre Jordan.
That's a low. Yeah, I would be a backup center than DeAndre Jordan. It's a low bar.
Well, Morello got buckets on you, so I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But
but he got buckets on me too, so I'm not even gonna say nothing.
yeah, you can't really talk, can you?
No.
But and then obviously, I still don't know how you trade for Jimmy Butler. He seems pretty happy, and then you let him walk.
That's the thing that like I just never
And, like-
got. I mean, and I don't like completely disagree with choosing Simmons over Butler at the time, just
also
because.
gave up literally the best role players of the era of the process era for him.
No, I know. And giving up Covington and Sarge
Gave
was
up
just,
Dario too.
yeah, it was crazy. I mean, and Roko's turned out to be exactly what the Sixers need now.
Yeah, I was hoping the Clippers didn't re-sign him. They got him for pretty cheap too. That
Yeah.
would have been nice.
Yeah, but like, Simmons was obviously still pretty young and had a lot of untapped potential. So I don't like completely blame them for being like, we'll go with the person with the highest ceiling over the floor. But I don't know how you don't do everything in your power to keep Jimmy Butler, because
Butler's
he's that
17
dude. He's
He's
that
a
dude.
16-game player.
He's that dude. Exactly. And he'll give you buckets. He'll stop you from getting buckets. He's a leader on the floor. He's no nonsense, which is probably what you need in that locker room outside, like to pair with Embiid, who I think is a good leader, but obviously he can be a little bit like joking and, the Twitter stuff, which there's no problem with, but just different styles of leadership in the locker room, I think isn't necessarily a bad thing.
It would be better if he was fawning over Jimmy Butler after not getting bounced by him and like they were on the same team.
Yes. Yes. And I'm sure that video is just to the heart.
I think people
you guys.
forget how good Jimmy Butler is during the regular season because he kind of coasts, it feels like. And then in the playoffs, the man, he's a 16-game player and he's absolutely him.
Yes. He's very, 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 very good at basketball in the Sixers. Literally everything that they need, he is. I mean, the shooting's but improved, I think, in the last few years.
Gets to his spots on the court well. And
yes.
He knows what he's doing, and he has a game plan. He executes it.
He was the best player in that series.
Easily. And the defense is unreal, and he's tenacious, and he's a leader. And the Sixers lack all of that.
He hustles.
Yes. So I don't know if there's anyone out there right now that could emulate a Jimmy Butler for the Sixers, but someone like that, I think, is someone that they need to pick up, whether it's the play style or with the personality. But I don't know if you guys have anybody that you're looking at in particular, but
I honestly have not looked at the free agency class this year, to be honest. But it's like anyone with attitude.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I want to say that PJ Tucker is a free agent at the end of the season. I have to double check on that. But
you need someone with like him or like Jay Crowder or Pat Bev. Give me Pat Bev. Feed me Pat Bev.
I think Pat Bev would be great for the Sixers.
Pat Bev joining the Sixers roster and then going on, with Stephen A. and just like talking smack on whoever.
I'm not kidding. That was one of the greatest interviews in television history.
It might have been. It might have been. Honestly, he just slandered Chris Paul's entire existence.
The cone comment is one of the greatest things I've ever heard.
Dying.
And I'm gonna start using that, like Buzz is a cone and stuff.
Hilarious.
Chris Paul becoming like the player version of Doc Rivers, but like not 3-1, but with like 2-0 leads, just becoming like the player Doc Rivers.
Oh yeah. And that's the other thing too. Like, do you guys want Doc to stick around? Because he was named the top 15 coach. People forget.
Yeah. No one forgets. No.
Yeah. Anyone that wasn't named the top 15 coach outside of like Eddie Jordan should have a real problem with that ranking.
That guy, besides being a bad coach, is just like such a condescending ass that like it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, like trying to explain everything he does. He's like, oh, I'm gonna say it's like just shut up, dude. Like no one, for my industry at WIP, like he makes a pretty good soundboard because everyone kind of just like gets really pissed whenever you play one of his stupid things that he says. But like I'd rather just have a legitimately good coach.
He's a top 15 coach though.
Yeah, I know. We can keep
for the one championship he won. People,
Yeah.
Can't forget about the 08
four
Celtics
Hall
'cause
of
they don't make
Famers
you
on his
forget.
team.
4 Hall of Famers on the roster.
Yes.
He's basketball Joe Girardi.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a very, very fair comparison. And that's I'm glad he's on your side for that too, for Girardi. So but yeah, that's
you don't have Thibodeau.
that it's fine. All right. We're
By the way,
just,
when the Sixers started the process, the reason the Sixers made the second round to begin with against a Doc Rivers coach Celtics team was because of Tom Thibodeau.
that is true. That is true. People forget. Well, most because he left Derrick Rose in a little too long.
Embiid wouldn't even make it to the playoffs if Thibodeau was coaching.
If Thibodeau was the coach,
45 minutes.
He'd be out at the All-Star break.
No, easily. You would just run him into the ground. It'd be gross. But which I guess props to RJ and Julius for putting up with playing 38 minutes a game the last 2 seasons because they're probably really tired because he runs his players into the ground. So
I heard the Garden was back.
the Garden's never gone anywhere. Yeah, I mean, the Rangers.
They charge. For hockey.
Garden's back.
Yeah.
Garden's never gone anywhere.
I heard it was the mecca of basketball, and the best basketball a year played there annually is.
It is the nicest. It is
the Big East tournament.
Is the opposing team in the Big East tournament?
Yeah, exactly. So, which I know Aaron loves a certain team that plays in the Big East tournament and frequently wins it. So,
I'm a fan.
Yeah, I know you're a big Nova fan. All right. That's pretty much all the time we have. Any last thoughts? Aaron, we'll start with you. Any last thoughts on Sixers process? Anything else?
Just I'm not really sure. I guess good luck to Tyrese Maxey in Brooklyn next season.
He's never gonna let that go.
I would say the most frustrating thing for me, this is with any sport, when you enter an off season, whether this is, on podcasts, just like shooting the breeze with friends, sports radio, TV, whatever, is like, all right, like what's on the horizon? What's next? And I know we've already started to get the rumors of like Harden's taking less money or guys that might target this offseason, but it's really hard, at least at this point, as we sit here in mid-May, to see like the outline of like how this team gets over the hump. And sometimes there are obvious free agents, especially in the NBA, and the NBA has become a 12-month a year league where free agents the summer are sometimes even more exciting than the regular season because of like this guy's going here, this guy's going there. You think back to some of those LeBron summers. Like as of right now, it's hard to see like the direct vision of how Morey gets this team over the hump. I mean, that's why he's an NBA GM and I'm not because Tyrese Maxey's still on the team. But like if he wants to earn his paycheck, like get this, like find value at the margins like we were complaining about earlier and get this team over the hump in ways that like we're not currently seeing right now. Because right now it's very hard to see why we won't be having this same conversation a year from now. And as a fan or someone who like watches this team on a pretty regular basis, it's really hard to get excited about a team like that when you don't see the direct path over that hump.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's gonna be like you said. There's no really like crazy off-season stuff right now, probably because there's still playoffs going on. But like, it will be a little hard to see how he transforms the roster into making it back to a championship contender. So we'll see. But thank you both so much for coming on, Buzz and Aaron. This was a lot of fun, as I thought it would be. So, this process worked, I would say, but I don't know about the one in South Philly. But yeah, that's all I got. And thank you all for tuning in and showing love as always. Make sure you follow on social media. We got TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at The Morello Show. Always doing some content there. So make sure you tap in and we'll see you next time.